All right, welcome to the TUF Guys podcast on the MMA Today podcast network. This is our premiere episode, and we will be discussing what many are saying may be the final season of The Ultimate Fighter, TUF 27, Undefeateds. I'm John Franklin of MMA Today, and I'm being joined by the founder and editor-in-chief of MMA Today, Tony Fagnano, Big Tone. Tony, what's up?
Hey, man, I'm glad to be on here and glad to finally talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right at the beginning, I'm gonna do the most controversial thing of this entire season, just out of the chute, just so we can set some parameters. Violent Bob Ross. Do you like that nickname or not? Because I don't like it.
I gotta say, as a person who watches Bob Ross to fall asleep, I don't know if that sounds creepy, but that guy is just so peaceful, but at the same time quirky, and he just puts me to sleep. So I hope I've seen his fights before. So hopefully he doesn't put me to sleep the way that Bob Ross does. The nickname itself, very creative. And he does, you got to give it to him. He's got kind of the look going on, so I can kind of see it. I don't hate it.
I can respect that. It's a weird nickname. It's almost like one you can't give yourself, but if someone else gives it to you, like if you're in the gym and you're like, look at this motherfucker, Violent Bob Ross over here. And then you just say, well, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to own it. Me, go ahead.
I think that's every nickname, though. You can't give yourself a nickname like that. That's always a bad look when you're you walk up, and you're I'm silent Jay or whatever, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
You just can't do it. It's it's a no-go.
All right, so let's set some the foundation for this. So when you look at a season of TUF, and I'll kind of chime in myself, what gets you interested in the season of TUF? What determines whether or not you watch it a lot, you watch it a little? What pulls you in?
It has to be. You have to have good coaches. I think that's a big part of it. Because my favorite are the at least the season of TUF that sticks out in my mind the most is the heavyweights. When they had Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. That was the season, because there was a break there where I was really big in the UFC, and then other sports and other interests came up. I was a kid and I got into other stuff. That season really brought me back for whatever. They had a lot of big name fighters and just not even maybe guys that were big on the regional scene, but just names like Kimbo Slice. How can you deny somebody like that? But I think this season is really based on guys that have proven themselves, on the regional scene, and that could honestly either make it on the UFC roster right now, or it could be on a Contender Series type show. Some of these guys have been on the Contender Series, so that's a good point right there.
That's true. Yeah, I'm the same way. It's for me. It's the coaches that draw me in. The seasons that I've watched the most. I kind of got into the Uriah Hall season because he was just cracking everybody and just highlight reel, knocking them out. I like that season that you were talking about. Rampage and Rashad was a big season for me that I liked. So yeah, to me, it's the coaches that sort of draw me in, and then I just hope. I used to have a joke with friends of mine. Because they would say, I don't like the reality show part of it. And I'm like, well, without the reality show, you just have kind of shitty fighting. Not shitty, but you know what I'm saying? It's not UFC caliber guys yet. So yeah. The reality show is kind of what gives it another angle. It's like if you're watching MTV's The Challenge and you're like, man, how cool would it be if these two guys fought? And then the Ultimate Fighter to me is that. Here's these two guys in the house. How cool would it be if they fought? Well, they're going to fight. So let's talk about pre-fight analysis. Much props to Sean Bitter. He did a great job in sort of breaking down the season. I used it in my packet. I've sort of leaned on it in all the pre-fight analysis. When you heard these guys being announced, who sort of jumped off the page at you and you were like, okay, you'd either heard of him before or you were interested to see him fight?
Out of the whole roster, you mean?
Yeah, the whole roster. Who was the guy that stood out to you?
Well, actually, the guy who won, Gianetta, I had heard of him. He had done an interview with us, and I had watched some of his fights. He stood out. Luis Pena, because his management's kind of been pushing him, and I don't even know how he really came up on my radar, but he's been on my radar. Who was the other guy? Tyler. Well, I don't know how I forgot this. Tyler Diamond, California, probably one of the best prospects out of California. Team Alpha Male. That's the guy who I think is going to win this whole thing, at least out of the featherweight. I should say out of the featherweight part. Um, Bryce Mitchell, I'd heard of, and then obviously the brother of Akman or Os. Shit, I'm going to butcher his name. Ashkan Mokhtarian. Did I say that right?
You did.
His brother. I mean, that's yeah. And then the other guy, I didn't even realize that I had seen him fight before, but he has. I had made fun of him because he has "Fight God" tattooed across his stomach, and so I had made a joke about him a while ago when he was on LFA.
All right, yeah. So for me, it was pretty much the same. I mean, I cover World Series of Fighting a lot, so Bryce Mitchell I'd seen, and Tyler Diamond, similar. Kyler Phillips is a guy who's local here to Phoenix. So actually, hopefully, when I went to cover the lab when they reopened their gym, he was there, and I was so up my head of my own ass. I didn't even, I talked to like Benson Henderson and Lauren Murphy and Rob Emerson, all the people you'd think you'd talk to, and then Kyler Phillips was just kind of walking around, giving me the what's up, and I was like, hey man, what's up? And he's like whoever. So now he's hopefully I'll be able to, because he's fighting next week, which we'll get to later. I might try and scoop him up this week for an interview. But yeah, so I thought, kind of the same thing. I like that none of the guys really come in with huge resumes, but they're all undefeated, but it's like they're a little bit still under the radar. Because here's the interesting thing for me about TUF, and I've talked to some buddies and some guys in the industry in the past about this. If you had a tournament of guys who write for MMA Today, somebody's going to look like a killer, and somebody's going to go out in the first round, and somebody, like, if you get a group of guys together, someone's going to be a world beater, and a bunch of guys are going to get their ass kicked. Any group of guys, if you were to put in a tournament, some are going to rise and some are going to fall. So I've always been hesitant in sort of basing what I feel about a fighter based on TUF, because he's in this weird small sample size. So, I mean, does that play for me? Does that play into your thoughts at all?
Yeah, I mean, like this group of guys, I think you nailed it. Like they have good resumes. They're definitely not household names, but they're all guys who could, potentially go on to do big things. I mean, these are all guys that would be targeted by Dana anyway for like, looking for a fight, contender series. They all. I don't think there's anybody on here who hasn't fought in a regional promotion that we've at least heard of.
Right.
Us more like hardcore MMA fans have heard of. There's no like complete nobodies, I guess you could say.
All right, so I want to talk now about the rosters and kind of a little bit of the draft strategy, because on Tough Talk, well, we'll get to that in a second. But so basically, Tyler Diamond went first overall, then Kyler Phillips went.
Yeah.
So basically, the way it happened, it was and DC touched on this on Tough Talk, and I only watched it for a second. I'm glad I caught this part of it, but he said that Stipe could have really nailed one of the divisions, one or the other. But what he was doing was he was following DC's lead and ended up getting the second or fourth or sixth best fighter. So as the selections sort of played out, it was Tyler Diamond, and then Stipe took Kyler Phillips, and then Cormier took Bryce Mitchell, and then Stipe took Suman Mokhtarian, and then DC took the first lightweight, which was Richie Smullen, and then Stipe took Trezano, and then Cormier took Pena. So the point he was trying to make was, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is had he taken Tyler Diamond, and then Stipe took, if we're saying Richie Smullen's the best lightweight, if he had gotten that approach, he would have nailed it. Do you think that was just sort of games? I mean, when he said it, the show was over. So it wasn't really like he got in Stipe's head. But how would you have done this knowing that you had two different weight divisions that were being drafted at the same time? Does that make sense?
I'm not sure that Stipe fully understood a lot. I don't know. He made another interesting choice that I'm sure we'll get to later. But I mean, I definitely would have gone for the top. If DC is going to take the top featherweight, definitely go for the top lightweight. I don't think that's any question. Like you shouldn't take the second best. I don't want to label them already. We're not like they're not officially ranked or anything, but
right.
The second best featherweight. Like that just doesn't really add up to me. And it's kind of like just doing him a favor for no reason, which is I guess why DC was offering to kind of do him a favor in return, where they were doing the like, let's do the my number one pick versus your number one pick versus
Right.
I guess that's I guess he kind of felt bad almost that Stipe didn't understand the rules, or that was a confusing part of it.
Well, and what fascinated me by this was if, in any kind of competition, who knows who's bullshitting and who's not. But the one thing I did like about why DC suggested that was he was saying if these guys are quote unquote the fourth best fighter on our roster, my four against your four, it's giving those guys more time to develop. So I did like that. I thought that was kind of cool of DC to say, let's let the guy who is the fourth best fighter here stay in the house longer and develop a little bit longer. So, I mean, I kind of get where he's coming from that. But before I forget, tell me the interesting choice that you thought in case I don't get to it.
I mean, I understand Gunther was his guy, but picking him to fight Gianetta, who is by far probably one of the better prospects on the show, just really did not make sense to me at all. That seemed like trial by fire, and like it's his own guy. And I understand like the whole confidence thing, like boost his confidence up, like, hey, you could do this, you could take this guy out. But man, that just hindsight's 2020 as well. But
right.
even before I saw the result of the fight, when he just picked those two fighters, I was like, I don't think this is going to turn out well. And I think you go on my Twitter and see my reaction, like, yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, okay, so I'll say this. The only thing that I can say in Stipe's defense is one of two things. One, Gunther himself said they don't train a lot together because of size difference. So maybe him and Stipe just, I mean, they know each other, but it's in passing. He doesn't really know he's got. And two, that's the healthiest you're ever going to be is the first fight. So maybe he was like, listen, my guy came in shape. He's healthy. I mean, the Gianetta thing is a little curious. I mean, obviously he didn't know Gianetta that well, or he certainly wouldn't have picked him. But if you look at the rest of the picks and you're Stipe, now let's say you don't know any of these guys, and you're Stipe, your logic is, well, this guy was picked third by DC of lightweights. So maybe there's some, but I know what you're saying. I mean, the way, and we'll get to the fight here in a second about how it went down. I just want to touch on a few other things, and we'll get to the fight since it was so quick. A couple notes that I had just in watching at the beginning. First time, I believe, two champions have coached and are fighting each other, because obviously guys who are both champions don't fight often.
No.
Those are super fights. So what did you think? Do you think that adds an extra component to it? Is that more interesting to you? Meanwhile, side note, it's two of the more dad bod guys there is. I mean, Stipe, when he's not in shape, is 100% dad. Cormier is Carl Winslow every day of the week. So it's weird that these two guys ended up coaching, but it's a hell of a fight. Does that add more to you that this is going to be a super fight, or what?
I think the fact that there's the big fight at the end is always that carrot on a stick type thing, and this one I think is probably one of the more appealing carrots on a stick. You had last season, which was the inaugural flyweight women's belt, but that was kind of like, everybody already knew there was going to be all these other bantamweights and straw weights, moving up or moving down to take that belt anyway. So, it wasn't really like a huge prize, but champion versus champion, I mean, it's hard to deny, the big fight at the end there. That's obviously going to be a huge deal when it happens. And I think that's good too, because, I mean, let's be honest, DC and Stipe, they don't really have those like crazy personalities. They're just like gonna burst out through the TV. But thankfully, they also don't have the annoying tendencies of like TJ Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt back and forth.
Right.
So you're gonna have like two respectful, kind of like more laid back guys. But there's a huge prize at the end here. I mean, the huge fight. And then probably two of the better guys you could have picked to actually coach them, which is always my problem when you get guys like, and I really don't want to like crap on Garbrandt, but like that's not really the guy you want to coach you, like someone like like DC or Stipe, that's someone that you would be down with coaching. Cody Garbrandt, someone who's still kind of learning, even though he was champion and everything. I don't not really coach material, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, he's not in that headspace at all. He's not thinking about coaching. He's all about his own career and his own future and all that. So yeah, I completely get that. I will say a couple other side notes, I guess, to the fight. Dana very conspicuously said Cormier was the baddest light heavyweight champion of all time. That did not go unnoticed by Twitter. That did not go unnoticed by me. Clearly, it didn't go unnoticed by you. I mean, he's trolling John Jones here. That's obvious. But was that a little bit unnecessary? Is it kind of par for the course for Dana? I mean, what else would you expect?
Totally par for the course. Yeah, that's 100% Dana.
Yeah, so that stuck out to me. A couple other quick notes. DC said he was looking for wrestlers. Obviously, he said he'd do good in the competition. Stipe said nobody really jumped out to him. Thinks they're all close in skill, which probably explains why he chose his teammate to fight a killer that just ran right through him and tapped him out. So, all right, here we are. Let's talk about the alpaca shearing John Gunther, who ran into a gentleman in Giannetti who just was. I mean, yeah, this show fascinates me because they typecast a little bit, or maybe it's just these are the roles people fall into. They have the guy who's the narrator and the voice of reason, and the guy who's going to carry on the narrative throughout the show. Then they have the guy who's driven because of the family. It was interesting to me that both these guys are homeless, both lived in their cars, but. So Giannetti seems like the guy you want to. It's interesting. He was early in the fight or early in the season. Seems like a guy you want to get behind. Humble guy, Northeastern guy. He comes off like Joe Lozon a lot in that way. Very similar area they're from. So, I mean, there's not much to talk about with the fight. So let's just get into it. Obviously, Gunther shot in, and next thing you know, his neck was just the fact that he had no idea he wasn't knocked out after the fight was amazing. But I mean, is it just? Do you think that he just made an error in that one shot, or it would have been that or something else?
I feel like it would have been that or something else. I mean, Gunther, I think, is 10 years older than Giannetta. And Giannetta, big, tall, lanky guy, has all the physical attributes that you kind of want and has shown, in it with his record, 6-0. He's got some good wins in there, and just to show, how I wrote this down because I thought this was funny. Sean, our prospect expert guy at MMA Today, one of his notes on Joe was sneaky good choke. So that was kind of an understatement.
I'd say.
So. Like I said, as soon as this matchup was announced, I just did not understand it. The matchup itself, I didn't really see where Gunther was going to win the fight. It's kind of a weird size disparity there. If it was going to be a stand-up battle, I think I would have taken Giannetta there. I really think the only way that Gunther could have won was by taking him down and holding him down for a couple rounds, but there wasn't really a way for him to do that without risking a lot, which wound up losing him the fight.
And all due respect to John Gunther, I mean, he's undefeated. I'm sure he's a great guy, but in these situations, strong style isn't the kind of gym that breeds champions. They were fortunate enough that a guy who was built to be a world champion, probably lived a couple blocks away, but it's not like, it's not like it has this long history. And I'm sure Stipe was on the show and they were like, who can we get out of Stipe's gym that's, 145, 135, who can we get to fill this bill? 145, 155 pounds. And Gunther was the obvious choice. I mean, he was undefeated. So meaning his ability to win this tournament is probably not the basis for which he entered the show.
No, I mean, the guy had a great person. I mean, you saw I think you saw the reactions on Twitter after they kind of did the segment on him. Everybody fell in love with the guy. They're like, right. This guy's awesome. It's fucking like shearing alpaca, like alpaca and a triangle choke, and he lives in a van and all this. and everybody was like, I'm like everybody's team Gunther, like I'm all aboard this, and then he gets flatlined in 15 seconds, and it's like maybe you shouldn't have matched him up like that, and you could have built up some personality, had a win against maybe an easier foe here, and then you see him later on, in the UFC or a Contender Series or somewhere else, but. I mean, going out like in 15 seconds. I mean, what do you do with them now?
That's true. And one quick note on the training, just to get your thoughts on this. For the most part in the training, Joe Giannetta just got his ass whipped by Cain Velasquez and Daniel Cormier. And looking at that, I saw the kid get a little down on himself, but I thought that was good for him. I was like, dude, when are you ever going to get this high level of guys sort of pressuring you? Do you think that may that they were fortunate in the first fight that they did that with Joe Giannetti, and not everybody's going to have that sort of strong will and fortitude to just say, okay, I've been getting my ass thrown around for a couple of days here, but I've been in some bad positions, and are there going to be some guys that's not going to work for?
I mean, training. I mean, he's obviously a lot smaller than those guys. That's kind of an understatement, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know what he was really. I mean, I think it's good. I think it's good to know, that you're not unbeatable, that you're not you're not basically the shit or whatever that you think you are. It's always nice to be humbled. I've done light pads and sparring with Gabby Garcia, who trains down here in San Diego, and she humbled the hell out of me. So, I've been there. Like, I don't, it doesn't like hurt my feelings or anything. I don't get down on myself. I doubt he would. He's a professional. He's had a lot of professional fights, and I'm sure he's got an iron will, and that something like that wouldn't, break him down. And if that is going to break you down, I don't think you're going to make it far on this show when you have to cut weight every 3 or 4 weeks. I don't even know how much these guys are cutting weight.
All right, so after the fight, obviously, you can see the look on Stipe's face when he was facing Gunther. He was like, the doctor was trying to get him to follow his finger, and Stipe was like, I can't even fucking look at this guy. But it was a very awkward situation for Stipe. But anyway, moving things forward, obviously Giannetta moves forward 17 seconds. The official time, the official finish was high elbow guillotine. Up next, we have Kyler Phillips and Brad Katona. Like I said, Kyler Phillips is a local guy. I'll try and get with him before the fight starts, before the show next week. So let's talk a little bit about the future of TUF real quick, just out front, because obviously we're hoping moving forward with this podcast, the fights are going to be longer. There'll be more to talk about. There has been some whispers about this, maybe the final season of TUF. There is a weird, and I want to get your thoughts on this because this sits very weirdly with me. People are almost acting like TUF and the Contender Series cannot coexist, and I view them as two entirely different things. Because the history of TUF is that they've had guys who've come through. I mean, almost everybody. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Everybody has a connection to TUF somehow. Frankie Edgar was, didn't make it, and Dillashaw I think lost, and then Dodson and all guys have either won. Ferguson, like in each division, the guys up near the top. Not to mention the champions, so Bisping and Forrest Griffin and, all these guys that have won belts. So all these guys, the handful of guys that have won belts. So for me, well, let me ask you first. Do you think they can coexist, and do you think one necessarily means the end of the other?
I think they could coexist. I think the Contender Series is taking quite a bit of talent, though, already. Like, they're sucking up a lot of the last season. It seemed to be mostly the LFA guys, and this season from the leaks or breaking news or whatever you want to call it from our team, a lot of them been CES. Both of those are Access TV, type fighters, and so it's taking a lot of talent from these kind of feeder organizations, which is going to obviously leave less for TUF. I don't know. I think the dynamic of just where we are at in MMA right now too is changing, with so many different organizations out there, overseas, and Russia and Bellator, and I don't know. It just seems a lot different right now. Like 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 tough. It needs a shakeup. It needs a big shakeup, not just like we're gonna do we're gonna have a belt at the end for a new weight class, or we're gonna do all undefeated fighters. Like those are kind of like more gimmicky things. Like they need like a shakeup, as far as the selection process maybe being like a little bit more transparent. Like almost like NFL draft type thing where they have like a large group of guys because they do this anyway. They bring out like the 30 or whatever guys, put them in a gym, have them roll around. I think do something more like that. It just needs a shakeup. It needs a shakeup of some kind.
It's weird because there's a lot of things. I'm a UFC fan from way back. I'm a guy that thinks one pay-per-view a month is enough. So, I'm a purist in the purest sense of the word. But I guess so for me, what throws me off with the whole tough thing is I like tough because tough builds. By the time a guy wins tough, he's already has a fan base in a sense. Now that is contingent upon ratings, obviously, because if nobody's watching tough, you haven't built anything. I mean, you have a few. He has a fan base, but probably more than he did before he came in here. But it's a little bit different. The Contender Series, it's a night. Guy wins. Next thing you know, he's fighting. Got to wait for the fight. So it's a little bit different for me. But a lot of this feels like it's just not the UFC monopolizing the market, but they do a lot of things that just sort of like keep fighters from being able to do other things. Like this crazy schedule to me is like, well, we want to have, let's say, 400 fighters so that they can't sign with Bellator or this or that or the other. And if we have all these fighters, then they have to fight, right? So then we have to have this manic schedule. So I get where you're coming from with it. It's tough to have talent being, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul in a sense with these two, conflicting. I don't know. I mean, do you tier it? Is it like you can win tough to get to the Contender Series, or win the Contender Series get tough, so that it's a graduation, or is it just like we're screwed? They're just going to keep taking talent, and that means whatever that means.
That's very interesting. I didn't the competition to get into the other one. That would be very interesting. But I mean, obviously this is all still up in the air. But I mean, if ESPN does land the Contender Series, I think you're going to see, and it seems like they don't even have any interest in the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, they want the Contender Series, which I think is interesting in itself, right? That they're like, whatever with the reality show, give us the fighting, aspect of it. I think that will probably get better production values because how ESPN is. They're crazy with the production values. Like that's going to be like, top of the line. And let's be honest, when it was on Fight Pass, it wasn't really top of the line. You had, kind of glitchy stuff going on and awkward interviews and there's a lot of weirds. And it was their first season too, so you got to give them leeway there. But yeah, I think you'll see very high production values from them if they do go to ESPN. If Tough is going to stick around, it's most likely going to be on Fox, I would imagine. That's who's going to keep them since ESPN doesn't have any interest in them. So I guess we'll see that. I don't think you could do because they'd be on different networks. So I'm not sure if they'd be willing to work with each other as far as like if you win this show, you can go to this show. And really, they're trying to get him. And the whole thing is to get that UFC contract. And these, at least the Contender Series fights, you're getting paid for. The fighters are getting paid for. And I think there is some kind of allowance or bonus money with the tough fights, but they're viewed as exhibition matches. So then when you look at their pro records, they don't really count. There's a little gray area there.
Right. So I'll ask you two questions, and we'll start to wrap this thing up. One, do you think there is still a public thirst for the Ultimate Fighter?
The ratings would say no, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the ratings would say it's definitely on the decline. I feel like you would need to get one of the few like real stars. God, I really don't want to say his name, but you know what I'm talking about. If they got someone like that on the Ultimate Fighter, or even brought back, let's see. I mean, this would be also be really tough because she has a contract with WWE now. But if you brought like Ronda Rousey back, or just one, or Brock Lesnar, God, any of these like gigantic names that all the hardcore fans are cussing at me right now for even bringing up. But I think like if you brought one of those guys back, it boosts the ratings up, and you go from there.
The second question, and this can be the last one, is that I always talk to buddies of mine about when we talk about sports, because I have a buddy who's a huge baseball fan, and I always give him shit. I like baseball, but I give him shit. I said, if baseball was invented tomorrow, no one would care. It's not a sport best built for 2018. This is not the way we think. So if the Contender Series and the Ultimate Fighter started at the same time, which do you think would be more successful? Which is a better model?
Contender Series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any. Yeah, because there's still that drama there, but it's more natural drama. You have the fights, and throughout the night, obviously there's a contract, maybe two out there. You don't know who's going to get it. Even if you get the win, you're not sure if you're going to get the contract. And then, you could get, let's say you get a big knockout early in the night, but then someone else, like upstages you later, then they might steal that contract away from you. And then there's that whole, waiting process where Dana and the matchmakers go, and, talk over who they're going to give the contract to. So there's that kind of just natural drama where none of it's like manufactured. It's not really reality TV. It's just, a straight up like who got it? Like who I guess it kind of is reality TV though. Now I think I don't watch very much, but now that I said it out loud, it does kind of sound like reality TV.
Well, and it's interesting because when you watch like Looking for a Fighter, which is the other sort of thing these are all sort of cut from similar cloth. It's Looking for a Fighter, like you said, it's manufactured. It's like you almost think, okay, this kid probably knew he was getting this contract before Dana walked in this room, but we had to make sure everybody was around, and so we shot it 3 times and then we edited it. So there's that component. It's funny when you watch the Contender Series, the fact that it's live, like you said, it's almost like you're watching Dancing with the Stars, but at the end of every episode, someone wins, which is kind of cool. It gives you that immediacy, the drama, but there's a payoff right away. So it does have that going for it, but then again, it lacks in the ability to build a star. So I mean, although Sean O'Malley won, and he doesn't seem to be struggling to build his brand, so it's weird.
I feel like if ESPN did pick the Contender Series up, and hey, maybe they know something that we don't. They might have UFC might have given them their numbers that they obviously do not release to the public, as far as how many of their Fight Pass subscribers watched or like streamed that. So ESPN might know that was like the most popular thing on Fight Pass or whatever. I'm not sure. I have no idea. I'm just throwing that out there. But yeah, if they're gonna pick it up, I would have to imagine there'll be a lot more backstory putting into these guys. Like before their fight comes up, they'll go out to their house, to their gym, wherever, and definitely give them a little bit more of a story than when it's on Fight Pass and it's just really bare bones. And you got Snoop Dogg and Uriah Faber smoking weed or whatever, and
right,
it's kind of like a sideshow type thing.
Well, it's interesting. It's all right there. I mean, like you said, if they get a little more production value, then it turns into American Idol, where the kids are kind of auditioning, but you already kind of know a little bit behind. So there's a way that they can really make the whole thing work in a big way. And obviously, they want to be connected with Dana, and Dana is on the Ultimate Fighter, but it's a little bit different. So you know what I mean? Like they want Dana's thing. Dana for until Conor McGregor and until Ronda Rousey, until Brock Lesnar, even GSP. Was not really a bigger star than Dana. Dana is one of the biggest stars. There's only a handful of people that can contend with Dana, whereas if you were a talk show and you had a choice between interviewing Dana and Conor McGregor, you'd probably choose Conor, but Dana's right there. If you had a choice between Dana and GSP, you pick Dana. So I'm sure they're probably trying to get the Dana thing, his baby. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and you see Dana on SportsCenter all the time. Anytime there's a big fight announcement, like any like McGregor fight, John Jones fight, it was always Dana popping up on Sports Center
Right.
talking to the talking heads or whatever over there. So I thought that was interesting, because especially because it was, Fox is supposed to be their network, right?
Yeah.
Like really big, like exclusive breaking news type stuff. He would pop up on ESPN, and announce that with them, and then do like a tour afterwards where it was Dana going around all the different ESPN shows. Then he hit like
Yeah.
Fox with Colin Cowherd and all that.
It's funny who gets what. Dana's like, we have a new partnership with Amped Energy, and you can win a ringside seat. I'm gonna go on Fox. Conor McGregor is fighting, Khabib Nurmagomedov. I'm gonna go on ESPN. It's like he breaks fights on ESPN, and then does like contests on FS1. It's funny to me what he chooses to do with what. So, all right, let's go ahead and get out of here. I'll give you the last word on this season. In the beginning, are you optimistic? Are you where do you how do you feel? Excited?
I feel like for once I'm excited, but I have to be cautious because I was excited last season, and then things just kind of tailored off at the end. I don't really know what happened there, but I don't know. There's some guys that I was already interested in prior to this, and I had been following. So I feel like I could stick this one out, make it to the end, and be happy with the ultimate the finale portion of it, and the matchups that are going to come out of it. I'm definitely excited to see Tyler Diamond get his first fight. I'm excited for people to see Tyler Diamond for the first time on TV. That'll be cool. I think he's mainly fought in GKO, so he hasn't really been on he hasn't been like on Access TV or anything like that. So that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about the season too. The one thing that I always am so fascinated with is how these guys can just keep their mouths shut about the whole season. They know, and they're like, obviously they're facing huge litigation from the UFC for not doing it, so I guess it's not that hard. But that's the craziest part to me. Like, I'm gonna talk to Kyler Phillips if I can this week, and this fucking guy could be in the finale or he could get his ass whipped this week. Who knows? But he's got to have this interview with me. Well, I'm going to be, trying to get information out of him. He's got to keep his mouth shut or face a huge lawsuit.
It seems like it always leaks though, like every season. But at least last season they kept their lips. Everything was shut down until like 3 days out. I think it leaked out.
Yeah, well, Nolan seems to be kind of putting out there that he knows the way it plays out. But it's funny.
It always leaks. I swear to God, every season.
Well, what's interesting is that as shitty as I think this was, the fact that they pretty much went scorched earth with Josh Gross way back in the day for releasing the TUF results pretty much has ensured that everybody keeps their mouth. It sucks for Gross because he's really a great guy in the history of MMA, and he covers nothing UFC related because of that one thing. And it's shitty for him, but it kind of set the bar for everybody else to be like, hey, fuckers, you want to play around, your ass will be sitting on the bench with Josh Gross.
Well, it's funny, though, because, it hasn't – at least my old editor, Nick, I don't even remember what season it was, but he released the winner or whatever, or leaked the winner. And I think he got in trouble with Sports Illustrated because that's who I was with at the time. But the UFC didn't care. They didn't go after him or anything.
Yeah.
So I feel like Josh got the really bad end of the stick there.
Yeah, there's good pioneers and there's bad pioneers. He was, some guys are the first guy ever to cover UFC, and some guys the first one to get his ass a lifetime ban. So he's in the Hall of Fame for both.
Hopefully someday they let him out of that little prison yard or whatever.
And the worst part about it, I don't want to get onto a whole new thing with this because I want to end the podcast, but the worst thing for me about it is just like he has so much to add to the MMA community, and he can't do it. The biggest problem with him being not affiliated with the UFC in any way is anything that he would do would be missing UFC clips, and what I'm saying? Even if he wants to do documentaries, or I know he's talked about working with Bobby Razak about some stuff, and it's just he's kind of at the mercy of whatever fighters will donate or give him from their own personal collections of pictures. And, he's kind of in this box. Now he wrote the Ali Inoki book, which that's a smart way to sort of circumvent that. But anyway, this is not a Josh Gross podcast.
That's a great book, though.
Yeah, it is. So, yeah, like I said, it's not a Josh Gross podcast. It's a TUF podcast. So, guys, we'll see you next week. Basically, just to give you a quick layout of how this is going to go, you may see Tony and I again. You may see any number of people on our MMA Today podcast network. I'm going to just try and let people host things they want to host. You're not going to see me all the time, but I'll sort of lay the format out just so people know what they can expect. It's more about the theme of the podcast and the people hosting it. So, I'm really excited. I'm going to throw some stuff Tony's way to show him what I've been up to in all this time. I've been kind of disappearing from the scene. So you guys have a good night. Check out TUF, and we'll see you next week. For Tony Fagnano, this is John Franklin, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.